Welcome to the Mango Effect podcast, where every week we explore a range of ideas and inspiration that all culminate in designing the lifestyle that we've always dreamed of. No topics are off limits. We get into the practical, the hypothetical, and the downright juicy stuff. I'm Mindy Rosser, your host and lifestyle cheerleader, and I'm here today to talk about why we moved to Hawaii. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? Answering this question with the intention to actually act on the answer, it led me to relocate from the cornfields of Indiana, just outside Chicagoland, to the North Shore of Oahu. But the real question is, why? Why did I leave the entire life that I knew, all of my family, all the people that I grew up with? Why did I actually move all the way to Hawaii? And what was the purpose? What was the intention? What if it didn't work out? I think a lot of us, when we're thinking about where we want to live, it's often a default choice. It's often where somebody tells us we should live in this neighborhood because that's where all the rich people live, or this is where all the entrepreneurs live, or this is where all the cool kids live, or this is actually affordable and a good place to invest in real estate. I mean, there are a million reasons why we should live in a certain neighborhood. But what a lot of us never think to ask is, where do I actually want to live? What is the environment that I want my family to grow up in, that I want to engage in? What activities do I do? What types of climates actually jive with my rhythm? How much light do I need? Do I like the four seasons? Do I like the tropics? Do I want to go somewhere in the middle of the jungle? Do I like the Arctic? Do I like snow and skiing? All of these things come into play when we're thinking about where we should live. But too often we are stuck in our own heads about, well, this is kind of how it always goes. This is the trajectory. I grew up here, or my job took me here, or my husband or wife's job took me here. So now I am in this place and I just got to make do with what I have. We don't think outside the box and actually start with, where do we want to live? That is one of the biggest, most important questions. And a lot of us never think to ask the question of where we live. And then we wonder why we are never able to achieve the lifestyle that we want. It always feels like something is missing. And location often doesn't come into play. We don't think about where we want to live. We think about where we want to vacation, and we want to go to all these exotic places. We want to go to the Alps and go skiing, or we want to go to the Caribbean and go on an epic cruise. We want to go to Europe and, tour all of the amazing countries there. It's just interesting to me that we never think about where we want to live. Like, where do you want to spend the bulk of your days? You're never going to spend the bulk of your days on vacation, unless you are like very few people that is truly what they do. So I think we have to give this more thought. I think we need to be really intentional and thoughtful about where we want our families to be, where we want ourselves to be. We don't have to have a family to make a decision this important. It's about where we are the happiest. And at this point in time, there isn't a metaverse that we can just hop into and escape where we are actually living in real life. So it really is important that we pay attention. The environment that we live in shapes who we are on the inside. And I'm saying that because I watched a major transformation happen when I moved to Hawaii. So about just over 3 years ago, so it was before the pandemic, we were sitting around the table. We were talking about where we wanted to live. And when we both looked at each other and we said, Hawaii. If price wasn't an option, that was the first thing that came out of our mouths. If price wasn't an option, Hawaii would be it. And then we asked ourselves the next question: why is price an option? Like, why is that preventing us from living the life that we want? If it costs 2 times as much, if it costs 3 times as much to live where we want to live, but we are achieving a dream, we are giving our kids a lifestyle that very few children have the opportunity to enjoy. We are going to be happier humans because we are surrounded by sunshine and ocean, waves, surfing. Why are we not taking that opportunity? Who cares if we fill up our retirement fund 10 years later than we would living in Indiana? Who really cares if we get 10 more quality years to actually enjoy every single freaking day? Like, I think people just get so caught up in their heads about, well, it costs so much, or I just don't know anybody there. There are all these reasons why not. And something my partner always says, Jason, it's like, Mindy, why are you always saying why not? Why are you saying how can I? And just that simple reframing, like, okay, instead of saying why I can't move to Hawaii, why not say how can I move to Hawaii? Like, how can this actually work? And let's approach the problem from that perspective, or what you would call a problem or a challenge. And when we did that, when we actually said, okay, let's play with this idea. Let's just we're sitting around. I can still picture it. We're sitting around the kitchen table. We're like, okay, let's play with this idea. Okay, it's good. We already know it's going to cost, everyone says it costs a fortune to live there, but we're pretty creative people. We don't need a big space. Probably can live in something smaller. We're pretty good at cooking our own food. We don't care about the nightlife. So if we just put more of our budget towards housing than we currently are, how would that affect us? Like, yeah, we could do that. We could totally do that. We could definitely pay 2 or 3 times what our mortgage was at the time without even batting an eyelash. Like, all right, then why? Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. So we went down that path, and yes, we asked ourselves a lot of questions. We did a ton of due diligence before we decided to take the leap. But once we realized it was the right choice for us, and that from all of that research that we did, we knew in our heart that this was the place we wanted to go. And we were also okay with the fact that if it didn't work out, yeah, we may have lost $40,000 or more in relocating here and then having to move back to the mainland. But was that experiment worth it? And in our minds, we said, yes, it is worth it. It is worth it to know whether or not that place is for us. So both of us, my partner and I, we both came from very interesting backgrounds, very different ends of the spectrum, but we both had lived dozens of places growing up. It's like we lived here and there, and then I explored where I wanted to live. And it's like I lived in the New York City, I lived in Chicagoland, I lived in Michigan, I tried California, up and down California, multiple places. I lived in different places in Illinois, inside Chicago, in Wilmette. There were all of these places that I tried to experience, and I just never could find home. It felt like there was always something off in my environment. So when I was thinking about Hawaii, I was like, that actually might be a really good fit, as wild as it sounds. Because it had a lot of things that I was looking for as an individual, as a human. I love sunshine. I love tropics. I like being warm. I cannot stand the cold. I could care less about the 4 seasons. I love the ocean. There's something about the water, and ocean water, not Lake Michigan water where I lived, ocean water that just is captivating, that is calming, that is soothing for me. I love the beach. I love the country. I like being isolated from the rest of the world. It's kind of nice being on an island, quite literally. And there were so many different things about just the mentality that I have researched about Hawaii. Keep in mind, I had never been here. I had never, ever been to Hawaii before we moved here. So I had to do a ton of research. I watched a bazillion YouTube videos, pros and cons of living in Hawaii, how much it costs. That is the biggest factor, is people are worried about the cost, and then also not fitting in here. It is very much a different country. I will just tell you straight up, most people from the mainland should never move to Hawaii and expect to stay here more than a year, because it is a very different place, and you do have to understand and be willing to let go of your ideals, your mainland ideals, and you're going to have to slow down. You're going to have to learn to show respect, which is an interesting concept. Mainlanders don't get it. You also have to take time to get to know people that are local. You have to learn their customs. You have to learn the language. There are certain nuances to living here that you have to learn. And most mainlanders just want to come here as a tourist, be treated like royalty and then go back home. It is not at all if you have ever visited Hawaii as a tourist, you have never really lived in Hawaii. Even if you thought you stayed here for a while and picked up on the culture, you did not. You must live here for months, if not a year or more, to really understand what it's like to live in Hawaii and what it actually means to live here. So why Hawaii? Why Oahu? So when we were asking the question, we were toying with the idea, and we decided, okay, we're going to pull the trigger here. We're going to fix up our house. We owned our house in Indiana. We're going to sell our house, and we are going to move here. And we had enough in emergency savings to make that move. And also with the proceeds from the house, the housing market was going up, as you know. And so it was a really, really good time to sell. And so we were pretty gung-ho with like, okay, let's make this happen and let's make it happen fast. So that was right around when we decided to move here. It was about 5 months before we actually got here, which is incredibly fast because we had to remodel the entire house, and then we had to sell it. And we were timing the sale, like we were signing documents literally as the planes were flying out. It was really, really crazy. But why we picked Oahu is we did some research. There are a number of different islands we could have moved to. And my husband is a carpenter by trade. So at the time, we were thinking that he was going to go to work full time and that we needed to be on the island with the most carpentry-friendly opportunities. And also, we had never lived on a remote island before, so we didn't want to go too remote because it does make it difficult to get where you need to go. So we decided, okay, the safest bet is Oahu. Once we land here, if we feel like Oahu is not a fit, we are going to go island hopping and figure out which island we should be on. So that was the intention. That was the goal. It's like, okay, let's live on Oahu for a year. Let's give it a year, give it a full year. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we like Oahu. Let's explore Oahu first, explore all the different areas and see where we actually want to live. So we actually landed and we went straight to Mililani, which is a mouthful, Mililani, which is in the middle of the island of Oahu. So if you're unfamiliar with Oahu, there are different areas. So you have town, which is Honolulu. That's Waikiki. That's where most people go as a tourist. Then you also have Waimanalo, which is where Barack Obama lives. There's also the windward side, which is very windy. That is why it's called the windward side, but it's gorgeous. And that's where some of the most beautiful beaches are. Kailua is one of the most famous, and it's gorgeous over there, but incredibly windy and very, very wet. It rains a lot over there, but you do get to watch the sunrise. It is the east side, so the sunrises there are gorgeous. And then you have the North Shore, which is where I live now, and I'll tell you how we got here. And then there's also the west side. So the west side is much more local in nature. It is beautiful. It is very, very hot. It is very arid. Think of the temperature of California, especially when it's really dry. It's very much like that. The terrain and climate are like that. So we landed in the middle. We're like, okay, we're in the middle of the island. We should be safe. We're far enough away from everything, but close enough to everything. Everything was in about a 45-minute drive. So we started there. We lived in a condo complex, and it was really, really good. I think the most challenging thing was downsizing from a big house. So we had just a normal, typical, almost 2,000 square foot house in Indiana, and then coming and moving into a condo that was 846 square feet, I think. And of course, there's no storage anyways. So it was like, oh my gosh, we thought we had downsized, and then we got here and unpacked, and we still had so much stuff. So it was interesting. It was definitely different. And then also we were not accustomed to being in an apartment condo setting where people are literally all around you. You can hear the people next to you, above you. We were on the ground floor, and we were right in front of the playground. There's a little playground in the condo complex. So our house was like party central for all the little kids in the condo complex to come play, which was really fun because it helped the kids really get acclimated to the environment, to people here. And it gave us a sense of, okay, this is kind of the island vibe. There were a lot of great people that were in that complex that helped us acclimate, and we made it past the year mark. We almost didn't, though. We almost didn't. There were a number of times where Jason and I just looked at each other. He's like, Mindy, why are we paying X number of dollars to live in a condo? We could live in a mansion in Indiana for this price. And we had a lot of heated conversations around whether we should stay or whether we should go. But what actually kept us here? We would not have stayed if it was Mililani condo complex long term. We actually decided, okay, we want to live on the North Shore. So during that year here, we spent a lot of time, like I said, exploring, figuring out, should we go to the windward side? Should we go to the west side? We definitely didn't want to live in town. But Waimanalo, that area is pretty nice too, but it's also very, very remote, and there's not a lot of surf spots. So we decided, okay, when we got to the North Shore, it was this very interesting feeling. If you have never driven to the North Shore, there is one place. If you have been here, you know what I'm talking about. You pass the pineapple farm with the Dole pineapple plantation, and right after that, probably a couple minutes down the road, you come over a hill and you look down and you see the entire North Shore from your car. It is just breathtaking. You see the ocean, you see the waves. If it's calm, it's just like this beautiful turquoise or different shades of blue in front of you against the horizon. It is just so gorgeous. And then you have the mountains to your left, you have mountains to the right, and you just feel like, wow, I've just arrived in paradise. So once we came over that bend, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. And then we kept going, and I was like, I'm in love. I want to be on the North Shore. Definitely want to be on the North Shore. So that's where we were like, okay, yeah, we definitely want to do the North Shore. So how do we actually get here? So if you've never lived in Hawaii, you can't just move to the North Shore. You can't just like rent a place. You can't even really just buy a place. People think, oh, if I just come with a big bunch of money, I can just come buy a place. They won't let you. They won't sell to you. It's a very, very interesting place to live. It is kind of considered the wild, wild west, especially the North Shore of Oahu. You have to really pay your time. You have to actually be local before they will rent to you, before they will sell to you, before they will let you live here. So we had to actually live in Mililani for a while before we actually got in good enough within one of the property managers here on the North Shore. We looked at a few properties, and we had to just kind of keep showing up and keep putting in applications until she finally said yes. And then we got our spot here on the North Shore. But it wasn't the first one. We had to apply a couple of times before we really found our spot. But moving here, it's completely different. Like living on the North Shore versus living in Mililani, it is technically on the same island, but it is not at all the same experience. So the North Shore is very much very, very country. We have mango trees. We have chickens everywhere. There are chickens also in every spot in Hawaii. Just about, they're kind of wild and running around. But the North Shore, the vibes are so much more relaxed, and they call it country. So you have town and country. So town is Waikiki, and then you have country, which is the North Shore. So once we moved here, it was like we finally felt like this is home. Like the house we are in, we have like a gorgeous, like especially for this area, it is a beautiful home, and we have a lot of land, which is pretty scarce here. So with lots of fruit trees and such. So we got really, really lucky, I feel like, in the spot. And where we live, we're literally right across the street from the elementary school, which means we can just kind of walk the kids across the street. We are 2 minutes down the road from Haleiwa, which is where all the epic surf competitions are, and also my favorite break to surf. So I feel like it really feels like home. And the house that we're in now, it's like, oh, I would be delighted to actually purchase it at some point, because we just love the spot. We love the space. The kids love it. And there's something to be said for the environment. Kind of coming back to that question of where do you live now and where do you want to be? When you find the right environment, you never want to leave. Unless you're a nomad type. Now, nomad types, you're probably like, this doesn't speak at all to me. I want to be traveling all the time. Well, I'm not a nomad type. So for me, when I was thinking in moving here, I'm like, you know what? I don't want a vacation in Hawaii. I want to like live there. Like I want to live where I want to be all the time. So where people come to vacation, that's where I want to be. That's where I want to live every single day. So it was definitely very challenging, I think, to get here. It was also very challenging to acclimate. The people here are very, very cautious. If you are Caucasian, and you do not have any pigment in your skin, if you are not tan, like you need to be like baked tan for them to think that you're a local. And I'm still pretty pasty white, even though it's as tan as I'm ever going to get. It just is what it is. And so we are kind of considered halis, which is a very derogatory term, but you just learn to accept it here. And that means that there is definitely, a pecking order here. So the more local people, and then there are halis, and then there are locals, there are mainlanders, like there are all these different categories of people. So you have to learn where you fit in, and you have to put in the time. So people will accept you here as long as you put in the time, and as long as you accept your role and show respect and you show aloha. So once you learn the basic rules of living in Hawaii, some people really don't like it though. A lot of mainlanders I've talked to are like, seriously? That's how it really is? I'm like, yeah, it's not a big deal though. It's worth it. But a lot of people would not say it's worth it. But I think this all kind of comes back to looking at your environment. Where do you live? Where do you want to live? And how are you going to get there? And sometimes now is not the right time to actually make that move. So if you're thinking, Mindy, this sounds great, but right now I have responsibilities where I am. Well, then write it down. Like, choose a target date. Choose a calendar date. And even if it doesn't happen on exactly that date, at least in your mind, you are working towards something and you are thinking very long and hard about where you want to live. Another way that some of my friends have gone about figuring out where they want to relocate is that they will actually go and visit different locations and kind of scout them out, feel them out, see if it's really what they are hoping it is going to be. We were pretty risky and that we wanted to save all our money and just move here. We just knew in our heart that this is where home was going to be, and we just bet on that, and we didn't feel the need to come visit. Everybody's a little bit different, so figure out what works for you. But when you find, I call it, when we found our stopping place. Like when we got to the North Shore, it was like, we finally found our stopping place, didn't we? We did not have the bug to move, and that is very atypical for us because every year, 18 months, when winter rolled around in Indiana or certain seasons in California when we lived there, it was always like, we gotta move, we're not in the right space. When we got here, both of us looked at each other, we're like, this is it. Like, we don't have any inclination to move. We are staying here, we are living here, we're gonna find our spot, whether it's this house, whether it's another house. It doesn't matter. We're in the right place. So think about it. Where do you want to live? Are you there now? Are you working towards it? And what is that going to give you? Like, how is that place going to enhance your lifestyle? I think you have to take in all the environmental factors that create an epic day. I believe that an epic lifestyle actually starts with one epic day at a time. And if you can be in a place that gives you more epic days than another place, then why not move there? We only have one life. And that's what I kept saying to myself. I'm like, okay, if I'm in Indiana, I'm going to spend at least 7 months of the year griping about the weather, hating winter, dreading the fall season because winter is coming. Why am I doing this? Why am I spending more than half my life upset at the weather? I want the weather to not be something that is determining how my day feels. I don't want to be cold. I want a predictable day, or at least as predictable as possible, every single day. Where can I do that? Oh, Hawaii. Okay, great. That solves a lot of problems. So these factors are all so important. And then I haven't talked about it much on the podcast yet. I will. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But mental illness is something that runs very deep in my family, and also something that my partner struggles with too. And I'm sure he'll come on the podcast to talk about it at some point. But bipolar disorder, it's a very present thing in my world. Multiple family members of mine have it. I've tried to see if I had bipolar disorder and tried to get diagnosed. They said, no, Mindy, you're fine. You're good. There's nothing there. But it's always something that kind of like looms over me. And my partner is diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So for us, it was really, really important to have an environment. And if any of you deal with mental illness, or if you support a family member who deals with any type of mental illness, whether it's classified as, minor or major, they're all major in my opinion. It's so, so important that you are in the right physical environment, because if you are not, those symptoms can escalate. And we noticed a major difference in moving to Hawaii when we did. At first, of course, the symptoms were pretty bad because it was all new, and that first year is really rough. You're trying to acclimate. You're trying to decide if you want to stay here, if you want to move to another island. What is the future going to look like? But once you settle in, you can kind of see the baseline of where the symptoms are. And for us, the mental illness just was like, wow, night and day. We finally are in a rhythm. And yes, there are a lot of other factors, but the environment is the biggest one. Having a lot of light, having predictable weather. He does so much better when it's warm, not cold and rainy. When we have too many rainy days here, that's problematic. So creating an environment and moving to a place that actually supported mental health is such a big deal, and it's underrated. Like, too many people that I know are living in places that are not good for their mental health. And whether it's because they don't feel that they can make a change, there are other reasons they have to be where they are. It's just, if you can make a change and an environment is a possibility for you, then do it. Seriously, consider doing it. Look at how you can do it, not if you can do it. and make it happen, because it is huge. Our entire family and the dynamic of our relationship, our love relationship, and also of our family dynamic has improved major. I don't want to say 10 times. I think that would probably be blowing it out of proportion, but at least 2 to 3 times better than it was in Indiana. And I highly, highly recommend it. So find your place. If you're not happy with where you live, you can choose to relocate it. And that doesn't have to be island. It doesn't have to be in Hawaii. Please don't all come to Hawaii, because there will be no spaces left for those of us who really want to be here. So whether you want to move to, maybe you just want to live out in the suburbs and you're in the city, or maybe you love the city, or you want to move to a different city, or maybe you want to move out to the country, whatever it is for you, think about that. And if there's not enough of a reason to stay where you are, then move. Just get it done and move. And this is something that a lot of people ask us, like, how did we actually do it? So I'm not going into all of the how stuff today. But if you do have questions, if you're like, Mindy, I've always wanted to move to fill in the blank, I don't really know where to get started, I love to talk about this stuff. So feel free to DM me if you would like to talk about it. We all deserve to live where we want to live. And it doesn't take becoming a millionaire to make it happen. All you have to do is you have to get creative. You have to learn how to live like a local wherever you decide to go. And I think it's a misconception that a lot of people have, especially about moving to Hawaii. They feel like they can't do it unless they have, millions in the bank and can purchase the home outright on the North Shore. And that's just not the case. You can actually move here. We were making less than $100,000 at the time, right around there, a little above, a little below, depending on how many incomes you were counting. And we made it happen. And our income has gone up since moving here, interestingly enough. So I think it's really a possibility for all of us. We just have to be creative. We have to understand what we prioritize in life as well. What values are really important to you? What activities do you like to do? The closer you are to those things, the happier you're going to be. The more epic days that you can have that actually lead to that epic lifestyle that you want. So that's my challenge. Think about where you live. Do you like where you live? Do you want to move somewhere else? Let's talk about it. So let's have a conversation about this. Hit me up on Instagram at Mango Effect Podcast if you want to chat. I love getting into the nitty-gritty of relocation and environment and how this affects us as humans. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Mango Effect Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss another episode. I'd be absolutely thrilled if you like the show, leave us a 5-star review. It's a new show, so we will appreciate any reviews and subscribes we get. Definitely help us as we grow. I will talk with all of you very, very soon, and stay tuned because we are actually going to have some guests. I'm so excited, some guests on the show coming up over the next couple of months. So I'm in the process of interviewing some really interesting people. If there are people that you want me to interview, if you want to raise your hand, if you'd like me to interview you about your lifestyle and you like to talk about lifestyle by design, creating epic days, all of these fun topics, then just hit me up on Instagram and we will talk about it and get you on the show. All right. I will talk to you next week. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Bye for now.